You're listening to the Mythcreant podcast with your hosts, Oren Ashkenazi and Chris Winkle.
There was a castle by a waterfall with a pink and purple wall and a princess living there. She had no parents and was all alone. She got by on her own and she liked it pretty well. 'Cause she never wore socks. She had a pet snake. She bought a red guitar and she ate a whole cake. And there wasn't anybody there to tell her what to do, so she did what she wanted to. Everybody knew the story of the princess who saved herself.
Hey, Oren from the future here. In this episode, I refer to typhoid when I should have been saying cholera, so just keep that in mind.
Welcome to the Mythcreant podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Oren.
I know I'm supposed to give listeners clever tips, but that's hard. So how about I just talk about how they should shift the polarity of every scene and then reconfigure the narrative matrix?
I mean, that sounds pretty clever, but
Mhm.
I think we should go the opposite direction and say something that sounds so, kind of silly that that people assume we must mean something clever. Like, if I was to call my writing advice on pacing Bishop in the Pantry. Like, what does that mean? That means nothing.
Hey, it's snazzy and memorable. It's got that buzz to it.
Yeah, it's just meaningless.
So when people do technobabble, I actually call that a clever ex machina
Mm-hmm.
because it's basically a dressed up Deus Ex Machina.
Yep.
Right? If the audience can't follow the logic, it's just like you made random stuff up.
You just said words. It's like, you could just replace them with want sounds and it would be dramatically the same thing.
Yeah.
And this is mostly a sci-fi problem, but you get it in fantasy.
No, it definitely happens in lots of fantasy where the magic system hasn't actually been communicated or figured out, but like the characters still solve problems with magic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, okay, well, I'll just solve this with magic again.
Yeah.
And sometimes it sounds very technical, but yeah.
If you say so. I guess I gotta take your word for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talking about creating clever solutions, which can be tricky.
Yeah.
Because that's why they're clever.
Right.
Obviously, they won't feel clever unless they meet a certain benchmark.
Yeah, and I'm not clever, so that's a problem. Right? It's like, I gotta figure out a way to make this character smarter than me. How do I do it? Well, the trick is that I have infinite time to come up with ideas.
I don't know, Oren. I think your podcast listeners would say something other than that. You're not clever. I think.
Have you met our podcast listeners? they can
Wait,
be harsh.
what are you? What does that mean? Certainly sound clever on the podcast is what I'm saying. I don't know what you were saying.
You're confusing sarcasm with cleverness. The thing to think about here is it's interesting that it is easier to come up with like split-second clever ideas than it is to come up with clever ideas to problems that take longer to solve. And the reason for that is that you as the author have plenty of time, and so if it's a problem where being clever is limited to like a few seconds, you can spend several minutes thinking about it. But if it's like something that people have spent their lifetimes trying to figure out, it's like, well, how much time do you got? You know?
There are tricks, though. We will talk about those tricks. So when do you need clever solutions? Because just about everybody does at some point. For one thing, you got to have your turning points.
Yeah.
Right? And you want them to be satisfying. And you should not just use the same type of turning point all the time. That's going to get really old. So sooner or later, you're going to want to have some clever turning points in there where your character does a clever thing in order to solve a problem. And it can just be a small problem, in which case they only need to be a little clever.
Mm-hmm.
But you're gonna want to have that in the mix. Otherwise, things are going to get repetitive.
Yeah.
And the other reason is because you want to make characters who are supposed to be clever actually feel clever, which brings me to my complaints about Fourth Wing.
just that.
I mean, our listeners might have noticed I am more favorable to Fourth Wing than Oren is.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Wow. We have slightly divergent opinions on Fourth Wing. And by no means a perfect book, but I think it's still doing a lot right.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that did continually bother me is that Violet is supposed to be smart and clever, but it's all hand waved, so it doesn't feel real,
Yeah.
right? Like pre-existing knowledge, for instance, does not really feel the same as a character doing, coming up with clever ideas to solve problems. So, for instance, Violet, the idea here is that she's been forced to go to like ruthless dragon college that kills its students for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not prepared for the life or death fights that has to do against other students. So because she's clever, she just already knows how to make poison, right? And we don't really have to see her do anything clever to make the poisons. She just already knows.
Yeah.
Right. So that's basically hand waved. But then there is one thing that would have been clever, which is figuring out a pattern so she knows who she's going to fight next. Right? Because these things are supposed to look random, but they've actually been prearranged. And she could notice, by observing, and this is how a lot of clever characters act. It's half of it is about their observation.
Yeah.
Right? Just like Sherlock, with the idea that we get these little clues. Right. A lot of times that's what it boils down to. She could notice patterns and realize, oh, this is not random. This has been prearranged. And here's how I calculate who's going to fight. Right. And that would make her feel clever. But instead, she just gets this diary that belonged to her brother that just tells her.
Yeah.
So the one part, and I think it was for Euros, I think it was a way that she wanted to, again, bring the brother into the story, and she was looking for a way to do that. But this was a place where Violet really could have used that so that she actually felt clever like she was supposed to be. And again, if you just have a character use their book smarts all the time, that's pre-existing knowledge, and we don't actually have to see them be clever on the fly. And, again, it's that whole making things understandable that we talked about with like the technobabble, right? The problem with the technobabble is the audience can't follow that. So you're just making random stuff up.
Generally speaking, just having prior knowledge does not make a character seem clever.
Yeah.
It's usually what makes them clever is how they can apply their knowledge. Like if they just, if you need to fix a car and they just know how to do it because they read that in a book once, it's like, all right. I mean, that's fine. It seems capable, but it's not going to make them seem clever. Right.
Again, if we saw Violet making a poison and she had to do something clever, let's say she was missing one ingredient and then she had to do some clever problem solving to find a new replacement for that ingredient.
Yeah.
Right? That could qualify. But again, when she's already made it and we don't see the process, it's basically the same thing as technobabble, because all the parts of it that required her to actually be clever have happened off screen, basically.
This one, there's another interesting scenario that comes up a lot for me, which is having characters figure things out from clues. And I have two funny examples from the same book that I read recently, Ninth House by, I think, Leigh Bardugo. It might be Lee Bardugo. I'm not positive about that. But so we've got two back-to-back examples of characters figuring things out from clues. The same character, actually, figuring things out from clues. In one case, making like the most wild leap in logic, and in the other, taking forever to figure out something that was very obvious. So in the first one, we've got our character, his name is Darlington. He's talking to another character about this time when she had been found at a scene where a bunch of people had died, and she mentions that her friend was there and had also died, and that her friend was left-handed. And Darlington knows that she can see ghosts, and somehow he's like, oh, hey, but I heard the killer was left-handed. Therefore, you must have been possessed by the ghost and gotten superpowers and used that to kill all the guys. And it's like, what are you talking about? None of that has been introduced. He somehow made that connection from hearing that the friend was left-handed. It's like the most wild supposition I've ever seen. And at first I thought it was because we had already found out that this was something that had happened and the author was just rushing us through the characters catching up. But no, this is the first time. This is how we learn that not only that this is what happened, but that she has the ability to absorb ghosts and get superpowers. It was such a wild way to find that out. And then later, I actually made a mistake. It's not the same character. This is now Alex we're talking about. Alex is trying to figure out why a ghost killed his wife. Or if he killed his wife or if someone else did it. And she gets hit by like a magical backlash where she sees visions of the ghost when he was alive being possessed by another spirit and shooting his wife. And she's like, I wonder what that could mean. And then she spends several pages working up to, I bet the ghost who possessed him made him do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I guess. Sure, I'm glad you got there eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to judge. I mean, it is really tedious when you see something obvious from the clues,
Mm-hmm.
and then it takes forever for a character to figure it out.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to be fair, readers do tend to figure things out at very different rates.
That's true.
So sometimes that is hard to account for, but yeah, it does feel like we could have gone a little faster. That's why I'm usually in support of giving a last important clue right before the character figures it out.
Mhm.
You know, you give one clue at a time. They do what thinking and processing they can, and then we deliver the very last clue right before they figure it out. So there's no long delay where you're just waiting for the character to catch up to where the readers are.
Yeah, no, that's usually the way to go.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, what was supposed to happen in the first example, right? Like, hearing that the dead friend was left-handed is supposed to put all the pieces together, but there weren't any other pieces. It was just like finding, and I don't know if, I legitimately don't know if Darlington knew that absorbing ghosts could give you super strength, like if he knew that was a power that existed, or if he also invented the possibility of that for this reveal. The book's very unclear about that.
Yeah, but that's a question. Like, was this discovery writing? We we are always guessing whether authors were discovering writing something and just making it up as they go, which it's actually surprisingly hard to tell.
Yeah.
Because a lot of authors who planned, right, if they did something that's funny, it could be just they didn't notice that part. They didn't notice it was funny. The mistakes can look very much like ad-libbing.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think what's going on here is that the reason why this is so, like, weird is that it's part of a meta mystery, right? Like, because Alex is actually our POV character, not Darlington. And so Alex has been hiding all this information from us, and I think that we were supposed to be shocked when, like, Darlington figured this out about Alex, and if if there had been more information, we probably would have figured it out earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah.
it's not really that shocking because Alex is established to be like a stone cold killer by then. So the idea that she killed a bunch of people we know she hated is not super surprising. The only reason it's a surprise is that the book had just not given us any hint that this was even possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the problem there, is that there's supposed to be a surprise, but the only way it can be a surprise is if we get no clues at all, because otherwise we just be like, yeah, I guess she killed them, because she seems like she would do that.
Yep. Sometimes those reveals just aren't worth it, folks. So if you have, like, let's say you need a turning point for like a smaller conflict,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's an argument, it's a fight, and it could be important or exciting, but it's not like one of the most pivotal scenes in the book,
Yeah.
right? One of the most exciting ones. Usually for those, if you want a clever solution, all you really need is just a single observation and then a strategy tailored towards it that happens like during the conflict.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, my opponent is favoring one side, so I'll strike there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or this person is arrogant, so let's fan their ego and make them overconfident. Or, hey, this person doesn't seem to want to hurt me. Let's negotiate instead.
Yeah.
Right? And that one, they come off as clever enough, right? They're not like gonna blow the audience away, but they're like satisfying enough for like your average conflict that you just need a quick solution to.
Yeah.
Right? So if you do something like that, you know, one observation, the character, and it doesn't have to be something they made in the moment. It could be something they made earlier, but then they think about it again during the conflict and be like, hey, I was told this about this person. So that means
Mm-hmm.
I should do this. Right? And that's, you know, really all it takes. This person hates me. Let's try reverse psychology. You know, something like that. So those types of clever solutions aren't generally too difficult, and, you know, an average turning point there is usually quite doable. The most difficult ones are society-wide solutions.
Yeah, or some kind of bigger scale problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in Deep Space Nine, how do we get the Romulans to help us fight the war? Because clearly lots of people have been thinking about that. So if it was easy to do, then it would, someone would have done it by now, right? And it's hard to come up with, okay, what can our main characters do that other people would not have thought of? And usually the most reliable way to make this happen is you create a combination of special circumstances and new expertise. Sometimes you only need one or the other, but often both. So in this instance, in Deep Space Nine, we have special circumstances, which are that things start to go really badly in the war, and this makes Cisco decide that he's actually willing to engage in some shady tactics that he wasn't before. He's willing to trust Garrick who is a spy master, right? And let Garrick do some stuff. And also, Cisco's the only one who has access to Garrick, because Garrick is undercover on his space station, so nobody else had this option to begin with. And this helps explain, Garrick helps come up with this clever plan, which of course has like a secret double extra plan inside of it, because that's what Garrick's like. But you're not left asking, well, why didn't someone else at Starfleet do this? It's like, well, they didn't have the option to. And Cisco wasn't willing to do it until just now.
Yeah. I mean, you have to remember that everybody's clever. And so the more people who would want this solution, right, and have time to make the solution, the more unrealistic it is for the protagonist to be the only one who thought of it. And I would also say that in a lot of these situations, cultural stigma only goes so far.
Right.
Right. So if there's a lot of money on the line, if there's lives on the line, enough people are going to overlook some kind of cultural taboo to doing something. Right. Because everybody's going to really want a solution to this.
Right. And if they're not, you are probably going to want a stronger explanation for that. Right. If you have a setting where there is some kind of vested interest in not solving the problem, that's totally doable. You just need to show that more than like, oh, well, in our society, we look down on people who solve this particular problem. It's like, that's probably not strong enough, right?
Right. You need like, these people are profiting by this problem not being solved. And so therefore they're using their power and money to take steps to prevent anyone from solving it.
Right. And you could combine that with social stigma, right? That's also possible. But
yeah, social stigma can help a little bit. It's just not enough by itself. And I've seen a lot of stories that try to, oh, well, nobody does this because it's not tradition. And it's like, okay, but that's only goes so far.
Right. And like to use a real life example, we have the story of Jon Snow, not from Game of Thrones, real guy, Jon Snow from the 1800s. And he did a lot of pioneering work figuring out the way typhoid spreads. I'm pretty sure it's typhoid. I will add in the show notes if I'm wrong about that. I believe it's typhoid. And he figured out that it was spreading through contaminated water sources. And he was like on the ground figuring this stuff out. The sort of like high tension, like tangible medical drama you could tell a story about. And so the question you'd have to ask is, why did nobody else ever think of this? What made Jon Snow the first person? And well, first of all, he probably wasn't the first person, but he's at a unique situation where he both has the knowledge, because medical technology and knowledge is advancing very fast in this time period. So he has access to knowledge most people don't have, and he is also kind of an outsider. He's not part of the same group of doctors who have been looking into this problem before. And then finally, once you have those things together, it makes sense that he is able to figure something out that previously people had not figured out.
Yeah. So if you come up with a way that things have changed recently that has created a new opportunity, that really helps, right? So we're not on an infinite timeline where for hundreds of years people could have figured this out. No, it's only the last 5 years.
Right.
Right. And so then your protagonist can just be the first person, right? That's, really useful. Any special abilities or skills or knowledge that are very specific to your protagonist, right? It was helpful that Jon Snow wasn't a doctor, and you'd want to specify why, right? If your character has a special magic power, again, the magic power by itself is not clever, but your character can use their magic powers in clever ways that other people can't because they don't have that power, right?
It would be a really unsatisfying story if Jon Snow just came out of medical school and was like, "Oh yeah, it's typhoid is spread through water supply. I learned that in medical school. We should fix this problem." Right? It wasn't that simple. Like, he did learn about waterborne illnesses in medical school, I believe, but there was still a lot of mystery around exactly how typhoid spread. There were competing theories, and the people who believed in, like, the miasma theory, they had some reason to think that, right? There are diseases that spread through the air, just not this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, an example in Way of Kings,
Mm-hmm.
right? I recently went through Kaladin's viewpoint.
Yeah.
And Kaladin comes up with all of these solutions. Again, in this story, what's going on is he is part of a bridge crew, and they're basically battle fodder, and their role is to carry these transportable bridges because this is a setting that has all of these chasms that the army has to cross. And so they carry the bridge and put it down over a chasm so that then the soldiers can cross, and then they pick it up and carry it to the next one. And the idea is that they're completely disposable and they die really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that Sanderson comes up with for Kaladin to solve these problems, because Kaladin's trying to keep his bridge crew alive, are pushing it. Like,
Right.
for instance, he taunts the enemy by, desecrating the bodies of their fellows, because we're like, oh, these people, they just cannot stand it when anybody moves the dead bodies of their fellows, and they get so angry, right, that they attack whoever does it, and that provides a distraction that then makes it so they stop attacking the bridge crew.
Mm-hmm.
But if this was the case, then their enemies would have used that against them long before, right? Because they've been, again, fighting for years at this point. And
Yeah.
so, and again, their enemies would have a really high incentive to find, novel ways of messing with them. So this is just not a thing. They would have to get over it, right? You can't.
Right. Especially, and we see the same thing happen in a few other places, right? Like the Parshendi are the non-humans they're fighting, and they have this problem where they always shoot at the bridge crew people instead of at the soldiers, and this tactic is established to not work because the human lords just send in more slaves to carry the bridges, and they apparently have an infinite number of those. And so the Parshendi are just wasting their arrows instead of shooting at the soldiers that would actually do some good. And I can believe that this would work for the first few times, but after years, no, they would have figured out that shooting at the bridges is pointless.
Right. I mean, and beyond like the fact that they can always replace the bridge crews, I think the bigger issue is they always make sure to bring enough bridges and bridge crews that they still never hold the army back, right? Because they're prepared to lose a whole bunch of them, right? And supposedly the bridge crews are like distracting the Parshendi. And it's like after a while, the Parshendi would notice that like shooting at these bridge crews never really results in tactical gains,
Mm-hmm.
right? They never actually stop the army from crossing, which is the purpose of the bridge crews. So why keep attacking the bridge crews if that never actually hinders their enemy in any way, right? Again, they would learn. People would learn and adjust. But I mean, Kaladin does have some special powers, right? That can be leveraged in this situation that kind of keep him safe. And one thing I would have really loved to have seen more that would have been a great way to sort of unlock new clever solutions and make it realistic that only Kaladin had done these things is we've kind of established that these bridge crews have a very short lifespan, right? Because they're battle fodder. And so usually everyone's dead in 2 weeks or something like that. And having just the difference it makes to have one person who can carry knowledge and experience forward is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you have any organization that has a turnover rate of 2 weeks, that's, everybody's permanently inexperienced.
Yep.
And can't learn and adjust, right? So even having one person who survives, that unlocks all sorts of solutions that just come with like having more than 2 weeks of experience. So that isn't actually used as much. I mean, Kaladin comes up with a bunch of solutions, but he's always attributed to the fact that he has like battle experience and he's clever, for the most part.
Yeah.
When just the fact that he's around and is surviving would just be a really big deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kaladin has all the skills, right? He's very good at many things, so we just
he's a very candied character.
Yeah. So, scaling it back down a little bit, one thing that I have encountered a number of times is the clever solution, or at least a solution that is portrayed as clever, but there are no real limits on what the character can do, so it doesn't seem clever. Like,
Mhm.
one really blatant example was from The Book of Doors, which I read recently, where by the end, the main characters essentially have unlimited time travel, and it's technically closed loop time travel, so they can't change anything that's happened in the past, although they don't actually know that that's the case. They just sort of assume it is. They never try anything. But that's a different argument. So they can't change anything, but they can just set up infinity traps, basically. It's like someone was playing Scooby-Doo, but seriously. They know where the bad guy's going to be and they know when, so they can just set up as many contingencies as they want because they have,
Okay, unlike in Scooby-Doo, when they somehow have foreknowledge of exactly where the antagonist is gonna step, so they can have a trap fall in that
Mhm.
specific location.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Oh.
but yeah, okay.
It's like that, and it's just nothing. It's like, yeah, okay, I guess you had infinite time to come up with something. But like, also, your solution doesn't even have to be that good because you can create as many of them as you want since you have unlimited time travel.
Yep. Sounds like we need some urgency.
Yeah, they do need some. They can even do the causality fake out thing that I described, where they can actually change things as long as they can make it look like the original thing happened, and that works too. It's just like, all right,
Mhm.
sure. I bet you that's very smart. You must feel very good about yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, having a story where you have a group of people who can go back in time to wherever they want repeatedly, it's just not very viable.
Yep,
It's just not a good idea.
I would recommend you not do that.
Yep. Don't do it. Instead, you can have it so they can't control where they go, so they're never prepared for where
Yep.
they end up.
Hmm.
That works fine. Or, they can go back just once and kind of learn how it works as they go. That works. But yeah, no.
Yeah, if they have like one trip back, that could work, right? They could set something clever up. But when it's like, oh, we have as many trips back as we need, it's like, all right, well, there you go, I guess.
That's not really clever anymore because the whole thing has been made too easy.
Right. Or like sometimes you have a situation where the the storyteller has introduced something into the story that's just too world breaking, and so they have to figure out a way for characters to counter it. But that sounds hard. So instead of coming up with cool ways to counter metal bending in Korra, we'll just make everything out of platinum, and now metal bending doesn't work anymore. Like, I don't know, guys. Why did you make metal bending a widespread technique? I just sort of assumed only a few people could learn it. But no, I
Mhm.
guess not. I guess anyone can learn it. So now we have to nerf it badly because it suffers from the law of inverse ninjas again.
Yeah, maybe they wanted to show that time had passed and things had progressed, or maybe they thought it would go with their because it's kind of a steampunky
Mm-hmm.
feel to it, or diesel punk maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
they thought it would go, except for it's the opposite now because now it's hard to use metal for anything.
Right. Yeah. Like now, metal bending is actually bad. It's actually like worse than normal earthbending in the Korra universe because the metal benders that they show never do normal earthbending. Like they're fighting like big robots made of platinum, and they don't open holes underneath the robots, which is what I would expect you to do because I guess they don't know how to do that, and so instead they're just like ineffectually throwing bits of metal at the giant metal robot, and it's very sad. It's like, this is the best we could manage.
I mean, sometimes that's what happens if you make character powers too powerful,
Mhm.
right? Is now they have to use them very badly or else they just insta win, right? Which is again why it's better to have smaller powers that your character can be clever in using, as opposed to really powerful powers that they have to be really incompetent at.
And of course there is the classic urban fantasy clever trope of just using a gun.
But see, it was a cultural taboo to use guns. And so nobody thought of breaking this cultural taboo
Yeah,
against guns.
friends don't let friends randomly introduce a gun into their urban fantasy setting. It's like, well, now you've opened that Pandora's box.
Yep, it's not clever to use something that we really needed the audience to forget about.
Yeah. If you have a big conceit about not using it, it's the same thing with like every Star Trek writer thinks they're clever by having the characters do something universe-breaking with the transporter. Like, every new version of Star Trek, we have to go through this of like, well, what if we just beamed a bomb to the other ship? It's like, don't do that. That would be really bad for the story if we could do that. That's not clever. Everyone has already thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, with that, I think we have reached the point where we will cleverly decide to end the podcast before we run out of things to say.
So if we said something clever that you found useful, obviously that is a positive turning point for us. So it will be very satisfying if you supported us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/Mythcreant.
And before we go, I want to thank a couple of our existing patrons. First, there's Amon Jabber. He's an urban fantasy writer and a connoisseur of Marvel. Then there's Kathy Ferguson, who's a professor of political theory in Star Trek. We will talk to you next week.
There was a dragon with a pointy tail. He was bigger than a whale and his breath was terrible. He scared the princess when he came around. Tried to burn the castle down, but she caught him by his tail. Then she tied him to a tree so the dragon couldn't fly. She told him he was mean and it made the dragon cry. When he finally apologized, she offered him some tea. He accepted it graciously. Now he visits every weekend with the princess who saved herself.
This has been the Mythcreant podcast. Opening and closing theme, The Princess Who Saved Herself by Jonathan Colton.